Androgyny, that's sexual ambiguity. The dictionary says having the characteristics or nature of both male and female. Some of the most famous, even revered people in our culture today are androgynous. Rock star Michael Jackson was even invited to the Reagan White House. The age of house husbands is here, as men are being urged to be more sensitive. The age of women in authority is here too. Why, and why now? We'll ask the author of Megatrends, John Nesbitt. Is all this gender crossing corrupting our youth? We'll ask the Reverend Jerry Falwell of the Moral Majority and culture critic Benjamin DeMott. Is this the man of the future? We'll ask the star of the rock group Culture Club, Boy George. The feminizing of society, an issue facing the nation.
From CBS News, Washington, Face the Nation, with White House correspondent Leslie Stahl.
They call it gender blending or even gender ending, the unmistakable merging of what we used to think of as distinctly male and female in our society. And it's shocking to a great many of us. Look at the Beatles, whose long hair appalled the country 20 years ago. But look how much time has changed. One not that familiar with rock music, I include myself, might easily ask if sexual confusion has become a prerequisite for stardom. Some of the most successful males and females are crossing gender lines. And what about the movies? Talk about sexual confusion. This is Dustin Hoffman. This is Barbra Streisand. And this is Julie Andrews. Men dressing up as women, women as men. Does all this mean a triumph for feminization? Women are moving into positions of power in business, in space, in television. The Democrats may even choose a woman to run for vice president. One simply has to ask, what's going on? What does it mean when the parade on the fashion runways in New York and Paris includes skirts for men? And when you see male college students dabbing on a little rouge and eyeliner for a new look.
There's nothing threatening about a guy that uses makeup.
I think it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think the basis of it is partly, one is boredom, and I think the other is a boredom which comes out of powerlessness. When you suddenly feel there is no need for you, there are no needs for the skills of the traditional macho man, and he's bored, then why not just go all the way out? All right, I'll wear a dress. And she says, all right, I'll dress up like a truck driver.
We've been dressing our little girls up in boys' clothes for a long time, but as the rock group The Kinks sing in their song Lola, girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world. These children are dressing like the rock star, Boy George.
I don't think it'll ever be normal to look like me, you know, to be as extreme as I am, but I definitely think that's kind of a statement of our times. I think it will happen.
We'll hear more from Boy George later, but first, John Nesbitt, the author of Megatrends. Mr. Nesbitt, you have said that androgyny is the 11th megatrend. What did you mean?
Well, I think that I would revise that somewhat, because what's really happening is that after hundreds of years, or how many it's been, of a society that's been run by machismo, patriarchal values, what's happening and been happening is that we're seeking a balance between masculine roles and masculine values and feminine values. This will be a very long time unfolding. Now, Michael Jackson is adorable, but he is not the direction America is going. In order to be heard, in order to stand out, you have to be increasingly outrageous. And so we see this. Who's forgotten Alice Cooper? I mean, this comes up as we look to become more and more outrageous, to stand out above the crowd. But what's happening in America in connection with this is a seeking of a balance of roles. And the expressions of this are all over, and it's awkward, it's painful, it's confusing at times, but it's probably the most important thing that's going on this century in America.
Is that you're talking about happening as much in the middle of Kansas as it is in the cities? Is it all across the country?
It's more of an age difference, I think, than geographical, although in this society the difference geographical are very pronounced.
It's more in the north and the south, more in the cities than the towns?
It's mostly on it's mostly in the east and the west.
Where femaleness is more acceptable, or?
Well, the working out of what the new roles are is more acceptable, and that's what we're in. We haven't decided yet. We haven't decided. We're in a long process of working out what the balance is going to be. Not the new balance, because there was never a balance before, but working out what the balance will be between masculine values and feminine values, and masculine roles and feminine roles.
Why is this happening now?
Well, it's happening partly because we busted out of the old stereotypes during the 60s of all kinds. And that was true of coming out of the closet, too, in all kinds of ways. But, you know, if you look around you, not only are women majority in our colleges and universities today, but in the very best law schools, and our very best medical schools, our very best architectural schools, women are a majority of the students. And this is going to have a tremendous impact. And this, too, is part of the working out of the new roles and the new relationships.
Joining us now in this discussion are Benjamin DeMott, professor of English at Amherst College, and the Reverend Jerry Falwell of the Moral Majority. Reverend Falwell, do you think this trend is good or bad for society?
Well, first I would say I agree with John that there is a trend towards outrageousness in the entertainment world. I don't think there's a great deal of connection between Boy George, Michael Jackson, and the move towards the genderless society as far as a unisexual development is concerned. If you ask point blank, do I think a genderless society is good or bad, I would say it's bad. I think it is a repudiation of God's creation. Many who today don't like to be men, who are men, or women who don't like to be women, are angry with the way they have been made and are unwilling to accept themselves as the creation of God in God's image. And I think the very gospel of Christ, his death, burial, resurrection, and the desire of Christ to merge with his people in that relationship called regeneration is pictured on earth by the simile of the church, the husband-wife, man-woman relationship. So I see a very deep problem there spiritually for the long haul. But I'm not frightened by what is happening today, because like Tiny Tim and a host of other relics, and I don't mean that in a negative way, that have long since left the scene and are forgotten. I see the Michael Jackson and the Boy George, and I've heard neither of them sing, so I have nothing for or against them. I understand they're fine young people, but they too, in my opinion, will disappear as one more fad, and there will be another attempt to go a little beyond that always.
But let me ask you about the trend toward women coming into positions of authority. Do you object to that?
Oh, not at all. If you look at Margaret Thatcher in England, she'd make an excellent president of the United States, and she'd get my vote. And I look at the Liz Doles and the Jean Kirkpatricks in our society today. Our problem is not with what NOW is saying about a woman for vice president. Our problem is having one of them for vice president. You know, I mean, very honestly, I'm that's a little brash, but that's my feeling. I think that what the American people and mainstream grassroots women in America want is that men would be men and women should be women, but that every woman should have the right to be and do anything in her heart that any man can do that is within her biological capabilities. But as long as men haven't learned to have children and women haven't learned to play NFL football, there'll always be a difference.
Benjamin DeMott, why do you think our young people are so attracted to these rock stars who are confusing us about which sex they are?
You have to say about Boy George that he does offer a very sharp contrast with a good number of previous rock stars whose nature was threatening. They were people who always came out with such force and with such threat and menace and hint of violence in them that a young kid, a young girl particularly, 13, 14, could hardly perceive such a person as cuddly or nice, friendly, or anything of the sort. It's very hard to see Boy George as threatening. He prances about, he's happy, he's sunny, and he looks nice.
But let me ask you all about how we can have a movement toward more acceptance of femaleness in our society, and our rock stars, the men at least, dressing as women, and have Ronald Reagan in the White House, who talks tough to the Russians, and our presidential candidates, Gary Hart, specifically chopping wood and riding on a horse. Which is the trend, John Nesbitt?
This is all a part of working it out. I mean, it's not that we have a macho patriarchal society one morning and the next morning we're going to have a balance between the values and the roles of the sexes. It's a very difficult period, and I think part of the popularity of someone like Boy George is sort of a comfortable place to identify and hide. You know, we're going through this just basic period of change in our society, and that's why Jerry's doing so well, because there's so many people who need to identify with a fundamentalist religious group. They need structure, they need something to hold on to, and it's very, very comforting, and that's why we see such a religious revival in this country today, because we are in a period of change. So it's going to be very lurching and painful, and it's not either this or that. It's a great, incredible dynamic that's occurring, and you'll see contradictions all over the place.
I can't believe that I'm sorry to harp on the same point, but it doesn't seem to me that this dynamic is that great and that difficult to place. It seems to me that what we have had in history for a long period is a steadily increasing democratization of education. We have more and more people capable of thinking and of imagining possibility in their lives, and yet we still have a society that's organized in tracks, so that the people are placed very early on in life in positions which are more or less, depending on where they're placed, are susceptible to possibility or offering creative opportunities to people. Now that's the situation, as I understand the situation.
But in this context, the great leap came after the war, when we had the tremendous increase of women in the workforce. I think that's the basic change, and that's increasing tremendously, with particularly the young women, with all of them working.
You can put it your way. I want to come back at you and say the extraordinary development in our culture after the war was the democratization of education, of higher education.
The only negative I see is that in Boy George, Michael Jackson, and many others who are portraying a femaleness from a male position is that a role model is being presented to many, many, many children out there who, in my opinion, may follow a wrong direction.
What's wrong with femaleness?
For a female, nothing whatsoever.
For a male?
For a male, there's nothing wrong with us being sensitive, if that is considered femaleness. Women couldn't vote in this country years ago. Thank God we're coming out of those extremes. Nothing wrong with a professional career for any woman who feels that is where she should go. But for a man to feel that not the macho and, as Ben described, the screaming, ranting trend towards violence in a fellow, but to be a man doesn't have anything wrong about it, and being a woman, totally. My wife is a very feminine woman, and I married her because that is exactly what I like, and yet she and I are equal partners, and she's a 50% partner in all we're doing. She was a banker. My daughter's studying to be a surgeon, and for that reason she can't right now find room for a man in her life until all that's worked out. But I do feel that when a man wants to be like a woman, it displays an unhappiness with who he is and how God made him.
What do you say if I say to you in response, look, what the Lord must be interested in, must originally have been interested in, as nearly as we can make it out from the Bible, is the condition of feeling within the human heart. The condition of feeling within the human heart is not a matter that we can specify in terms of Anglo-Saxon Western homes as they exist in the middle class, let's say in Topeka, Kansas. The condition of the human heart can be splendid under many different kinds of circumstances and many kinds of domestic relationships. I think that's implicit in what you're saying is a vision of the Lord God as an embracer of the middle-class American Midwestern home, and I don't believe it.
I don't believe that either. I think that whether you live in China with 1 billion people, many who are hungry, or in an affluent society like the U.S., God meets people at the point of their need, and our relationship with God as a Christian through Jesus Christ brings joy and peace no matter who we are, what we have or don't have. I don't think moving out into outrageousness is a way of reacting to or responding to a bad beginning.
Outrageousness is your word.
My father was an agnostic, and his father before him an atheist. But that didn't mean that I had to be, and one day, believing the gospel, I became a Christian and began a new life.
Well, let me then quickly go around here and ask you if you think in 20 years that men will be dressing more as women dress today and acting more as women do? or whether we will all pretty much look the way we do now. John Nesbitt?
Well, I think in 20 years, if someone wants to dress that way, it'll be more okay than it is today. I think that's the direction we're going.
Reverend Falwell?
There will hopefully be a time when we grow out of the silliness of this attempt of people to be what they are not.
Benjamin
I believe that talk about trends of this sort, sexual trends in sexual behavior, cannot be really useful and constructive unless it's rooted in a sense of what the society is going to be like. What will the class structure of the society be like 20 years from now? What will the power relationships be 20 years from now?
I'm more concerned with what the God of the society is going to be like, and I don't think he's changed in 6,000 years of human history.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will be back with Boy George in a moment. Boy George. His real name is George O'Dowd. His group, Culture Club, won a Grammy as the Best New Rock Group of the Year. He's 23 years old and says he's already made history. He talked to us recently at his London recording studio.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was dressing the same way and people didn't accept me. Now, because I'm a very famous person, people accept that I can look both male and female.
But let me ask you, you don't think you became a success because of the way you look?
Well, I think that's irrelevant. I mean, I actually don't, because there are a lot of people out in the jungle there who still dress the way I do, and my job is to make it safe for them to be able to be normal people without being successful. Do you know what I mean? Like, people say, oh, Boy George is a star, and they put it down to showbiz gimmickry. They say, oh, Boy George is a clever cookie, you know, he discovered show business, he discovered some glamorous image, and it's made him successful, which is true of a lot of artists, but not of me. I think what I'm doing is definitely a statement of our times.
What's the statement of our times?
Well, I think that, you know, we have a kind of form of living history. As many people that there are now that can remember D-Day and the atrocities of the war, there are also a lot of people around who can remember when, you know, being sexually different in any way, you know, homosexuality or bisexuality or any kind of sexual deviance as they saw it was you know, put in line with, like, crime, like a sin, you know. And so really, there's still a lot to be done, I think. There's still a lot of kind of people around who need to have their minds changed. And I think that, you know, as much as like in the 1960s when people freaked out about the pill and, you know, the sexual revolution then, I think that the way I am now is a kind of statement of what's happening now, you know, is how much we've moved on.
But let me just try and find out what you think we're moving on to, because I do think that people who are dressing the way you are more accepted. But why?
Well, I think what we're, you know, if you live with black people, they become like, it becomes irrelevant that they're black, okay? And if you live with, like, sexual ambiguity and sort of what other people consider to be weird, if you live with it, it becomes normal. And all this kind of illusion that I'm promoting homosexuality is obviously rubbish, because sex is a very personal thing, and sex is something that anybody will find out for themselves, and you cannot force somebody to be homosexual. You cannot promote homosexuality, okay? You can promote liberalness, you know, liberalism, but you cannot promote homosexuality. You can't make somebody. You know, the way you turn out sexually is a kind of deep-rooted thing. It's part of your emotion, it's part of your physical makeup. You cannot promote that by selling a can of lager on the TV, you know, or by wearing a dress, or by making up and singing weird songs. So I think that all that is an illusion. What I'm saying is that, you know, what I'm doing is promoting a new kind of attitude, a new kind of acceptance. I'm saying to people that, you know, doing your own thing is okay. It's not wrong. It's not harmful in any way.
Is there something that you consider to be male and something that you consider to be female, or?
I think there is, definitely, yeah. There's still divisions between men and women, which is a sad thing. And I think that women in America are much tougher than women in England. They're not stupid, you know, they're not kind of... They're almost like men, I think. They're very manly. They've got very masculine qualities. They don't get pushed around.
Do you ever think about the nuclear bomb?
I do think about it, but I have to say that, you know, living in a democratic country, it's very easy to say we should disarm. It's very easy to say, oh, it's wrong to have, you know, protection. Years ago, when Winston Churchill said Hitler was going to invade England, everybody said, no, he won't do it, and look what happened. I don't believe in taking risks. I hate bombs. I think that man is very stupid. I think it's one of the big, one of the saddest things about this world is that it has people in it, and that they want to design their own destruction. I think that's the saddest thing,
But I think that the acceptance of femaleness has something to do with the bomb, and the notion that people have a sense that males, masculine people, would more likely start a fight.
I don't think so, because you see, I once had a conversation with a Hare Krishna, and I asked them, would they fight? It's against their beliefs to fight. But they said if somebody was going to come and hurt their children, they would fight. No matter how feminine you are, no matter how masculine you are, if somebody's going to invade the people you love and hurt them, you're going to fight.
What do you think they're thinking about you in the communist countries?
Well, I know that we're banned from Russia because this...
You're banned?
We're banned from Russia, yeah. We're not
Why?
allowed to stop there.
Why?
Because you can hear Western music on Russian radio. And as far as I know, there are people who like Culture Club in Russia. And you can imagine the kind of damage that I would do if I went to Russia. Because I would show them what's available. I would kind of indicate a certain type of freedom which they beyond their wildest dreams,
Why do you make your face up to look like a woman?
I don't think I look like a woman. I mean, I'm a 6-foot guy, I'm very much a man, I don't think the thing is, a lot of people say that my eccentricity is the kind of product of an oppressed childhood. When I was a child, I never talked to my parents about sex, but if I had wanted to, I could have. It's just that I would have, being the person I am, considered it an invasion of my privacy. I think that all children find out things for themselves. And the way I look is also nothing to do with my childhood, my father's a boxer, but it's all too easy to say, oh, I'm kind of fighting against that kind of overtly masculine image of my father. But that isn't true at all. I was never oppressed as a child. I was never stopped from doing my own thing, and so maybe that's why I'm like I am now.
What did your father say the first time he saw you dressed up like this?
Well, he was holding a newspaper like so, and he went, that's what you want, that's what you get, and continued reading. That was the end of that.
You're kidding. He didn't scream and yell.
But then, by the same token, when somebody black moved into the street, my father didn't suddenly pack up house and move out. It was never... Like, when I was a kid, my father used to try and kind of feed me that kind of line about being a real man and everything. But I was quite a clever kid, and I always knew that it wasn't true. I always knew that just because you punched somebody in the face, you weren't a real man, or just because you kicked a football further than anybody else at school, that you were a real man. I didn't believe that, and I still don't.
What about American kids? Loads and loads of American kids think you're wonderful. What do you think you're touching in them?
It's difficult to say, we were doing a press conference out in America, I think in Pittsburgh, and somebody from a local newspaper asked me the question, do you think you're promoting homosexuality? And there was a great big woman, like a trucker's wife, with a little girl who was dressed up just like me and a little boy. And she kind of stood up and she said, I don't think so. White kids are normal. And it was like... And also there was another program in America where a little girl of 13, she said, Boy George isn't telling women to be men or men to be women. He's just saying do your own thing.
Boy George of Culture Club. We'll be right back.
I know you miss me, I know you miss me blind.
Finally, Clyde Wells of the Augusta Chronicle puts it all in perspective. He offers us famous Georges in history who have served as inspirations and heroes for their generations. He offers us Saint, Washington, Babe. His real name was George Herman Ruth, as you remember. Patton. And I'm Leslie Stahl. Have a good week.
Face the Nation with White House correspondent Leslie Stahl was produced by CBS News, which is solely responsible for the selection of today's guests and topic. This broadcast originated from Washington, D.C.